Today, we're going to be talking about cross-sector partnerships, and we've received many requests for training specifically on this topic. So we put together an event that we hope will address many of your questions and provide some valuable insights into the best practices for cross-sector partnerships. And so throughout the training event today, we're going to delve into partnering with military personnel, first responders, the marketplace, government agencies, school systems, and family law attorneys. And it's going to be a packed agenda, so I hope that you guys enjoy it. And before we begin today's training event, though, we always do want to open with prayer. And today, John Conger from the Nashville Area Marriage Initiative is going to be leading us in prayer. So John, whenever you are ready.
Let's pray. Our Father God, we're thankful for this day. We're thankful for this opportunity we have to connect with marriage champions across the country. We're thankful for this week that we've had to celebrate marriage in this country. And we thank you for our marriages, and we thank you for so many opportunities that we've had. And we pray that you will continue to open doors for us. Thank you for Stephanie and for Carl and for all the others who have been so supportive and so influential in building the marriage initiative across the country. So for all these things, we give you our thanks, and we ask you to be with us this day in this hour. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Well, thank you so much, John. We appreciate your prayer. Well, first on our agenda today, we have Marriage Initiative's very own Dionna Sanchez, and Dionna serves as our Director of Communications, and she led the charge on National Marriage Week this year, and she just did an amazing job. And so today she's going to be providing us with a National Marriage Week recap. So Dionna, we can't wait to hear from you.
Okay, well, first of all, you guys are fantastic. Because of everything you guys pulled together, National Marriage Week showed considerable movement this year in awareness and in participation. Brad was so generous to hold off releasing his book till the 13th, and so we did a lot of walking arm in arm with Brad. You know, he was getting messaging out about get married and all the wonderful stats that book provides about marriage being good. And then he was helping push National Marriage Week. We were helping push Brad. And so it was a great collaboration. Arlene, our spokesperson, she did some great interviews, and they're still going on. She has not quit yet. She's still completing some. One which really stood out to Carl and I, it was a live call-in show, and just to hear people tell personal stories and testimonies and to really resonate with the love beyond words theme, it was really moving for us. We had national marriage leaders learn of it for the first time, even though they've been working in the marriage space for a long time. We had influencers reach out to us to learn more about it. And we had a great surge in couples just recognizing and sharing about National Marriage Week via our hashtag or a meme that was really cute that they were sharing on Instagram. And that meme was about how long they've been married. And so it was really fun to see. There was a real newness this year, I think, for a lot of people that hadn't been heard about it and weren't aware of it. But it was a sense of excitement that National Marriage Week exists. Because of that excitement, we are getting people reaching out to us, asking to speak with us and further the conversation and connection, which is really exciting. One of the most energizing things was that everyone was walking together with the same purpose and voice, getting out there and sharing that marriage is to be celebrated and valued. And that's how I feel that God intended the body of Christ to be. And that's how you make an impact that lasts. It's working together. And we all did that. Iron sharpens iron. And because of the things that you guys did, someone else in another city, and this happened with several things that we heard about, someone else in another city had the courage to step forward and try something because of something you did in your city. So this is kind of a thank you minute for you guys, because I just want to recognize all the hard work you did. Man, we didn't have any set expectations, but if we did, you surpassed them. You guys got proclamations signed, and you created bookmarks and yard signs. You did interviews, virtual and in-person events. You did mailers, and you gave away date nights. Every creative idea that you came up with helped bring new energy to this movement, and it helped give it a lot of momentum this year. I think that God placed you guys intentionally in your communities because that's a special area that I personally noticed needed attention from National Marriage Week. And so I think God planted you guys and exactly where you are and where you live and breathe to serve marriages. This year, you may have shared with your church, but next year, your church may share with your community. It becomes a domino effect. And then the following year, your community effort may be recognized by your state. And so that's how the movement just grows and grows. And we all play a part in this together. It's not about your personal results and their personal results. It's all about our results collectively. And that's why we're making an impact. So I just wanted to encourage you to please, please continue to message about National Marriage Week all year long, even though the celebration is that 1 week in February, because the groundwork that you lay all year long is going to build relationships, and it's intention that builds trust. And those are two things that our nation and our homes really need a lot of right now. So both of those things take time to grow and cultivate. And so the things that you do for the rest of the year, they're going to pay off come next February. So just overall, we really saw more activity this year, more awareness, more growth, and we saw more connections being made. And we really feel like you guys in all our CMI cities have a really big role to play in that. So overall, thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys each mean so much to our team. We enjoy watching your achievements. We know all of your efforts. It took time and planning and sacrifice to get it accomplished. And we were just over here cheering and clapping and getting excited with you and for you. So I just wanted to say that we value you more than you could possibly know. We couldn't do this without you. And we're already pumped about next year. We have some great ideas brewing, and it's going to be even better. So thank you very, very much.
And our team created a National Marriage Week impact report that we will include in our resource package for you all next week so that you're able to look through that. It's beautiful. The team members who put that together did a wonderful job. So we'd love to be able to share it with you next week. Well, up next, we get to hear from Mr. Carl Caton, the president and founder of Marriage Initiative. And Carl's going to be sharing with us today two parts. He's going to share one part now and one part at the end of the training event. And so he's going to be sharing on cross-sector partnerships. And I will be sharing Carl's slide deck with you in the follow-up email, as well as any other slide decks from today's speakers. So you don't have to worry about taking notes. I will be sharing those with you next week. So Carl, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, wonderful. All right, we're going to talk today. We're going to have a lot of different people talking today about cross-sector partnerships. We're going to talk about all the different ways that we can mobilize our community. And this is a really exciting project because we're more than program administrators, we're movement leaders in our city. And we need to be movement leaders, especially when we think about the size and scope of problems in our communities. And you all have heard me say this so many times that we have 400,000 marriages in San Antonio, 80,000 of them are struggling. 9,000 couples will file for a divorce this year. And if we were merely program administrators, it would take an organization about 4 times the size of our organization to reach 4,000 couples in San Antonio. And would that be a worthwhile endeavor? Absolutely, it would be worthwhile to reach 4,000 couples in our city. But we have to take that honest assessment to realize that if we were to reach 4,000 couples in San Antonio, we would be reaching 1% of the marriages. And we desire to reach more than 1%. We desire to create a marriage movement in our city. And so are we a program leader or are we a movement leader? And I would submit to you that in our CMI cities around the country, we're leading a marriage movement. There's 3 things you do as a marriage movement leader. You carry the banner for marriage. You're the voice for marriage in the city. You resource your community very effectively. And most importantly, you empower people in your community. And let's remind ourselves that movements are about mobilizing people around shared purpose. And that's one of the things I love about National Marriage Week is no matter who you are or where you're working in the marriage space, no matter if you've written a marriage book that has sold 1 million copies or if you're mentoring 2 couples, where National Marriage Week ties us together. It gives us that sense of shared purpose and identity. But more than that is we have to work broadly across our communities, because large-scale social change requires broad cross-sector collaboration, not the isolated intervention of individual organizations. So as we think about the possibilities for cross-sector partnerships, this is kind of what it looks like in our communities. This is a real live ecosystem drawing of San Antonio. We've identified more than 60 roles that people play across 11 sectors of our community. Certainly, first and foremost, we always think about the church. The church is our first and best sector, but it's not the only sector, because we can empower people as counselors, business leaders, people in the education and healthcare world and beyond. So there's many, many sectors that we're going to talk about today, but ultimately, what we're talking about in so many of these roles is we're talking about how we put latent energy into motion. And that's how a movement really picks up energy and steam. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Steph, because I know you have a great lineup of people that are going to be sharing about a lot of different sectors that we can mobilize.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, Carl, for sharing that with us. And up next, we have the privilege of hearing from Mr. Raul Benitez on partnering in the military sector. And many of you don't know Raul, so I'm going to just tell you a little about him. Raul brings 27 years of active duty in the U.S. Army, retiring as a colonel and military intelligence officer, followed by 7 years in federal civil service, focusing on homeland defense intelligence. He's a certified professional coach accredited by the ICF. He's been married to Karen for 33.5 years, and they met at the University of Hawaii, and together they have served in marriage ministry for almost 11 years, supporting military couples through SAMI and establishing a marriage mentoring ministry at Northeast Bible in Garden Ridge. And currently they serve on the San Antonio Adventures in Marriage team. And when my husband Scott and I attended Adventures in Marriage, Raul was one of our coaches. And so he is just amazing. And I'm excited for you to get to hear from him today. So Raul, the floor is yours, sir.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. You're too kind, too kind. Hey, just a tremendous honor for me to get to be with y'all today. And thank you to Sammy for inviting me. There's a ton of things we could talk about, so I'm going to try to dive right in. So first and foremost, our big why in ministry with Karen and I has always been first and foremost Matthew 28, the Great Commission. We're going forward making disciples, and followed closely by Matthew 5, being salt and light for those couples that we serve for the glory of God. So that's kind of our big why. But so why should we focus on the military as a sector? And there's articles galore that you could find online. I think this one was particularly recent, and it had some pretty good information of what's going on. But the bottom line in the bottom left, there are stats and data. The divorce rate for military across the board is 4.8%, as you could read there. That's twice the rate of the civilian population. We had a period of 5 years before COVID, 2020, where we were actually seeing the divorce rate in the military go down. That's starting to come back on the rise. It was down around 3.1%, excuse me, and then it popped up to 4.8. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and we'll talk more about that later. But as you dive a little bit deeper, as you can see, enlisted soldiers, sailor, airmen, Marines have a greater propensity for divorce than officers do. And there's a number of factors that probably go into that. Oddly, also, there are more female service members that are experiencing divorce than males. And there's a lot of reasons around that. Largely, one of the factors is the fact that sort of the old-fashioned view of the military that females in the military who perhaps are married to males who are not in the military creates tension in the ecosphere of the military group from which that family is a part of, and the males tend to feel a little less, less manly, and that causes divorce and marriages to be at risk. I go back to that 4.8, and Carl mentioned it on his slide. That's just a divorce rate. I would tell you that there's an untold number in the military, it's probably not counted, of marriages that are suffering, that are challenged, that are in crisis. So there is a far greater problem than that number will show. And the last point there, uh, getting married very early. You have soldiers getting married at the on the average at age 22, um, and that's 4 years younger than the national average. So you can see there's an entire sort of formula here, or just a total setup for challenges that go with military marriages. So that's why, and I'll get into that a little bit more about the why here in the next slide. So as I start there in the top, this diagram, first and foremost, military life is unique. At the bottom of the diagram there, you see all the potential issues in a marriage, and that's really for all marriages. What makes military marriages unique is that the stressors are different, as you might imagine. I know we've got some first responders, someone who's going to speak on that here. So there's a lot of, I think, overlap on some of these stressors that we see in a marriage, but the work days are long and intense. Deployment, I'll talk about that briefly. We've had a lot of that in the last 20, 23 years. That has gone down significantly since we concluded our operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. We still do have some soldier, sailor, airmen, Marines deploying all over the world, but the 12-month and longer deployments are far less. That period of time, however, did bring a lot of combat fear, a lot of anxiety, which related to a lot of mental health issues that we see. All of these things, as we know, tend to have major stressors on families. I'll talk about relocation real quick. Permanent change of station, or PCS, as we see in the military. You see a lot of folks having to move in the military. Obviously, will move in a 20-year career on average about 8.6 times, which is, again, far more, probably twice the rate that a civilian family would relocate. And that in and of itself creates a lot of uncertainty, creates a lot of problems, creates a lot of dislocation from home support systems, particularly for non-working female spouses. There's a lot of research on that that shows that there are great challenges for non-working female spouses. Along with that, those same non-working spouses can't work. There's a lot of career anxiety in that side. There's a lot of career anxiety on the military side. Of late, we have a lot of force reductions that are going on. And if you've heard in the news of late, recruiting and retention across the military has been extremely challenged. We are not able to meet our requirements for recruiting and retention. When that happens, the old saying of doing more with less becomes more of a thing. It becomes a greater a challenge. So I say all this to say again that this creates the perfect storm for a lot of anxiety, particularly that last point of military transitions and future uncertainty. I want to highlight just a couple more things on the right side there. The last bullet there, the changes in centralized funding of military marriage program and family programs, that has, I think, changed quite a bit over the last several years. There isn't centralized funding, particularly, I know the Army for sure, I think in the Air Force as well, that is controlled. At the unit level, or at the installation level, the base level, there's opportunities now for some of these leaders to reach out to the community marriage initiatives. So I see that as a tremendous opportunity for community marriage initiatives as you all are engaging with your military community. The last point on this one is, and one of the big things, and again, this gets to why we care, why you care and should care as taxpayers. You want your military to be ready. You want it to be ready to do what it needs to do to defend our country, to defend our homeland. The world is a very dangerous place now, if you watch the news, and you want your military to be ready. And so marriage and family readiness is military readiness. There's a huge component to that. I could tell you stories of my two deployments to Iraq and how many soldiers that had to miss the deployment because of family issues. And that creates a hole in your formation. And when there's a hole in your formation, there is risk. So readiness is huge. Readiness is important. And the work that you all get to do out there in supporting your military is going to help with that readiness. My last slide, and I'll just conclude with this, is really answering the question. So what is it that we do? And how do we do it, most importantly? Identify, engage the community that you have there. We have people from all over the country. And I would tell you, don't just focus on your active duty folks. There are military civilians like I am now that are still serving in that way. We also have our retirees and our veterans in your communities that are suffering in their marriages from all of the stressors I mentioned earlier. You also have reservists and National Guardsmen. And those are just not your weekend warriors. They are reservists and National Guardsmen who do work full time as well in your cities. They're out there, and you'll see them around in your restaurants and your stores wearing uniforms where you don't think there's a huge base. They're there, and so they're an underserved community as well. But building those relationships, understanding who are those stakeholders, commanders and chaplains. I want to talk about chaplains very briefly. Chaplains are in a rock and a hard place in most instances. Chaplains are told that they cannot, from a faith perspective, insert faith perspective programs. So if you were in the community and you've got a faith perspective program, kind of my best advice is you've got to make a decision on a couple of things. Are you going to hold fast to being just a faith-based program, or are you willing to perhaps compromise for the purpose of, again, Matthew 28, still being able to reach out and disciple to folks in just perhaps a slightly different way. Find those chaplains who are willing to buck those trends, particularly the advent of DEI in the military. It is a thing, and that does prevent a lot of times faith-based programs from being introduced. But do you have the agility to go to a secular version of your program, and are you willing to do that? Those things I think are very important. You can highlight the recognition if you're in church, if you want to have events, whether it's a specific prayer focus or holiday observances like Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Those are good times to really highlight the military in your community. Focused enrichment programs that you can pull together. That's really, again, just identifying that audience and that community that needs your work. And using those stakeholders to develop some plans and programs that are focused to them. I work with a ministry called Live the Life Now, doing Adventures in Marriage, and Richard Albertson, many of you may or may not know him, but he does a great job in tailoring his work and engaging with the military, and it's an honor to get to learn from him in that way. There are support groups out there for family. These are really very important, a lot of spouse groups. So if you're able to find those on the installation or even at unit or organizational levels, those make for very good ways to get into military organizations and groups. And then, if you're in a church, and I used to preach this all the time to my church before when I was, Karen and I were serving in ministry there, which is, having a unity of effort across the ministries and the groups within your church. So if a child care provider in a church sees a child who is suffering, does that person who works in childcare know that there is a marriage ministry or an effort that is there? So likewise in the military, we've got to be able to talk to each other with that community to find out how we create unity of effort and work together to find those marriage and families that are at risk or in crisis. And then finally, just leveraging the power of any external resources you have, subject matter experts who are out there. Who is your expert? Who can you go to help you engage with folks? Folks, I will just conclude by saying we are an organization, we are an institution, I should say. We have our own language. We're different kinds of people. So learning more about how the military operates, who we are, learning the organizations that are there, what their missions are. It's just like, in my view, having a job interview. You want to do some research on the company that you want to work with, and likewise, learning a little bit more about the military and being able to speak our weird acronym language is probably some really good advice. So my last slide, just again, I'll stop there for any questions, discussions. There's my contact information. If you'd like or have any specific questions, please reach out. 2 email addresses there. Again, just appreciate everybody there. And I want to have a shout out to Rick and Sue Hugler, who are part of our San Antonio Adventures in Marriage team, and they're on, and just love getting to serve with them on our team. So thank you again, and I'll stop there for questions.
Thank you so much, Raul, for sharing with us today. And if you don't mind, we'll hold the questions until the end for our Q&A session, if that's okay with you. And then we'll have a dedicated Q&A segment there. But we really do appreciate you, Raul, for taking the time to speak to us on that. You have a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom to share with us, and we're just grateful for you taking the time to be with us here today. But up next, I get to introduce to you Mike Marotta. He's a proud native of San Antonio, and he was married to Dawn at the age of 19. And Mike has enjoyed 24 years of marriage and is the father to Nathaniel and Peyton. And after serving in the United States Air Force as a loadmaster, Mike spent nearly 2 decades with the San Antonio Police Department, excelling in various roles from patrol officer to crisis negotiator. And during a challenging period in their marriage, Mike and Dawn became marriage conference facilitators, focusing on serving responder couples exclusively. And today he serves as executive director of Warriors Heart, Virginia. And he's dedicating himself to helping our nation's heroes recover from substance abuse. So, Mike, we are ready to hear from you, sir.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, Raul. Thank you so much. There is a lot to be said about the work you're doing, and there's absolutely touch points. I'm listening to you and going, "Oh my gosh, yeah, sounds all so familiar." Real quick, I just want to start off with a story, and I shared this with Steph, and just this is a bit of a full circle moment for me, because when my wife and I's marriage really hit the low point, we were going, where do we go? Who do we turn to? And the first event we attended together was actually a Sammy event. It was over at St. Mary's and 281. There's a place there. We did a wonderful class with, I think, John Anderson, just like really great. And so I just wanted to share that. So this is really special to be here with all of you. So first responders, right? Where do we begin? How do we partner with our first responders? How do we collaborate? And I love, Steph, these questions that you sent me because they were so compelling. And I sat down with my wife and went, how am I supposed to talk about this in 5 to 7 minutes? There's just no way. So the first question that you sent me that I love is, what is the single most important principle for establishing effective partnerships and collaboration with first responders? I don't know that I can funnel that down to the single most, but what I can tell you, what worked for me in San Antonio is that I was a first responder. I knew what the struggle was, and so I had this almost inside track. And I think that there's a lot to be said about being a part of the community and having an inroad in that way, because this is a career field that is, oh my God, absolutely stricken with stigma. It is a culture of silence. It is a culture of mistrust and fear. So when you're an outside resource, and look, I know the effectiveness of a resource like Sammy and what y'all are doing in your communities, but first responders, they look and go, no way, you're not coming in unless you're already there. And Raul's probably familiar because I think the military is probably very similar in their mindset. And what I also love about the military is they've given such a good framework because they are years ahead of first responder communities. And I encouraged San Antonio PD, the leadership, look to the outside. Who's doing it well? The military, because there were so many touch points, there was somebody that I wanted to look to, like, what are they doing through their military readiness programs? And I love that you said readiness, Raul, because I do believe that readiness is a state of mind. It's a way of being. And it's something that I encourage, is like, we got to always be ready. Okay, I digress. The second question, what is the biggest challenge or opportunity that I see in collaborating with first responders? The divorce rate, I mean, I don't know that there's been a whole lot of research. I can give you some anecdotal numbers. Upwards of 80% of responder marriages are ending in divorce, which is absolutely astonishing to me. The power of relationships is the biggest opportunity that I see. I'm going to get on my soapbox. I got to be really mindful of time. I look at the suicide rates among first responders even. And again, this is not something that people talk about. If you heal relationship and you heal marriage, you can begin to then start to solve things like alcoholism, substance abuse. You can then begin to solve things like suicide rates. You can begin to solve things like violence within the homes. These are all things that exist within first responder homes that nobody's talking about. And I think if you really lean far forward in marriage and relationship, you can start to really talk about the power and sanctity that relationship has over a person and the healing power that it has. So there's a lot of challenges breaking into this community. I would love to be back in San Antonio. I am in Virginia now, but maybe we could talk about me coming back over there and helping. But you got people like the Hugglers, you got people like Raul that are already doing this work. So a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities. What one strategy has been most successful in fostering trust and mutual understanding? Again, I was on the inside. San Antonio PD, I'm going to speak about them specifically because it's where I served. That's a department of about 2,400 sworn personnel. They saw me on one side of the struggle, and then they saw me on the other side. And what really it came down to for me was being vulnerable and sharing my story in a way that officers had never seen. They'd never heard one of their own talk about infidelity. They'd never heard one of their own talk about unforgiveness. They never heard one of their own talk about anger. We never talked about moral injury and all the things that the job was going to come with. I think there is a big opportunity in an organization like SAMI to be able to come in on the front end, support officers day one of the police academy, all the way through retirement. I'm going to kind of end with this because my gosh, there's so much to be said about this. Somebody put relationship begins with vulnerability. I believe that SAMI wants to be in relationship. All of you want to be in relationship with your first responder communities. And I think offering first responders an opportunity to share their stories, creating space for is where we need to go. We don't talk. We don't share. We don't process together. We certainly don't do it in our homes, because although there's incredible benefit to sharing your emotions, in first responder communities, being emotional equates to being hurt, potentially being killed. We don't want to talk about it. How am I supposed to share with my wife and my children when they say, "How was your day today?" Oh, well, let me just tell you about it. I can't talk about the traumatic scenes. I can't talk about the stress that I'm under from supervision. I can't talk about the societal pressure. What is the single best way to address potential barriers or misunderstanding? Here's something that I want to just like remove because it's something that I heard all the time. The assumption is first responders like don't care. And I'm going to tell you where that comes from me. Anytime I was in some type of a social situation or I was engaging people, civilians in particular always wanted to tell me the story about the ticket they got from the officer who didn't care, and they wanted to share a story about this robotic officer. And I always said, you know what you're seeing there? You're seeing somebody who is so disconnected from their emotions and from who they are. You have an opportunity there to reach and understand in a very special way. I want people to know that when you're trying to get in with first responders, and there's this assumption that there's these cultural norms or these ways that it's not true. They care, they love, they hurt, they bleed just like everyone else, but they don't know how to talk about it and they don't know how to share it. I implore all of you in your communities, you want to go out and you want to build relationships with the responders, get ready, because it is the most fulfilling work that you will ever be involved in. But you got to hold a big space and you got to be prepared, because they're struggling right now. As we're here and we're talking, they're suffering. I know because I got an entire campus full of first responders and military, and every single one of them is struggling in their marriage. They're all struggling in their marriage. When we get underneath the substances, they all have marital issues. And I cannot tell you how important it is for me to be part of this. If there's anything I can do to support your efforts, create some type of a relationship, a bridge, you need additional info. I'm sorry, I'm probably going long here, but I'm incredibly passionate about this. And there's something to be said, and I wrote it down here, about the peer-to-peer healing. We use Warriors Healing Warriors within my organization. That is our battle cry, because I do believe there's something to be said about it takes one to know one. And if I can help responders heal marriages, you all call me, reach out to me, and I'm coming, because this is a big deal. And my marriage healed me, and my marriage brought me to where I am today. And healing my marriage ultimately actually led me to leaving my career of almost 20 years. And I didn't retire. I resigned. I needed to live in my purpose. So anyways, I digress. I'm excited for what all of you are going to do in your communities, how you're going to reach responders. I'm looking forward to having continued conversation with all of you. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Mike, for sharing with us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And I loved just hearing the passion that you have for this work and the passion for serving those at first responders and in their marriages. And I just thank you so much for being with us today. We really do appreciate your time, sir. And up next, we have the privilege of hearing from Mr. Bruce Wilbanks. He is with the Tulsa Marriage Resource Center, and he is going to share insights on marketplace partnerships from his years of experience in the business sector. So, Bruce, whenever you are ready, sir.
Thanks, Steph. I appreciate you having me on here. And I do want to talk about the business sector because I think there's a real need and market there for us. I think the most important principle for establishing an effective partnership or collaboration with business leaders and organizations is to understand your audience. What is the business leader's motivation? Ultimately, all business leaders are interested in two things: making money and saving money. They're interested in making money or saving money. So you need to be able to show them how caring about their employees' well-being, their marriages, their relationships will save them money. And the research clearly shows relationship issues of their employees cost businesses billions of dollars every year. In fact, in a research report by Matthew Turvey and David Olson, it was titled Relational Wellness, Corporate America's Business. And I'm quoting here: employees in failing relationships cost employers money. There are substantial productivity declines for workers in failing relationships. These workers often have serious health concerns, increased stress and anxiety, increased rates of depression, and increased rates of substance abuse. These workers directly cost companies in higher healthcare expenditures and indirectly through societal effects of broken families. And I'm still quoting: conversely, employees in successful relationships increase profits for their employers. These workers are more stable, more committed to their employer, and are often considered more dependable and motivated. Employees in healthy relationships are also physically healthier, experiencing fewer chronic health problems like stress and anxiety and depression, saving companies money in overall healthcare expenditures. And so it is an important area that you can help companies actually save money. And I think it's important to develop trust with these business leaders in these companies. One strategy that we use and develop is developing a friendly professional relationship with whomever we talk. Honestly, my goal when I meet someone new is to make them a friend. If I can do that, then they're much more comfortable when we talk the next time. And frankly, so am I. And so seeing people I meet as new friends goes a long way in developing trust because that friendship is what builds that trust. I think one of the biggest challenges to collaboration with business leaders is actually just setting the appointment with the decision maker and getting their buy-in. You know, asking for 10 minutes of their time is much better than asking for 30 minutes because time is money to them. And then use that amount of time that you do have to briefly show them how it will save them money if they listen to you further. In addition, in corporations, we often have to deal with human resources, and just as often they can be a stumbling block. Many people in HR are really in HR in order to push an agenda like DEI or some other woke agenda that's contrary to Christian values. And so, you know, and then also they just may assume that they're breaching some type of labor law if they let you come in and talk about the Bible or anything godly, and they worry about bringing the Bible into the company. So you may have to go in understanding that even though you may not be able to use the Bible, you can still use biblical principles to promote relational wellness in those companies. And sometimes the biggest barrier actually is the person that you're talking to. They just don't get it. You know, they don't see the need. So you have to just move on to someone else in that company that better understands how employee relationships really are important to the company. Or you may just have to move on to another company. Sometimes I'm so passionate about marriage that I spend too much time trying to convince someone to act when I just need to find the people God is already working with and join with them because they're out there. And to find these people, I think some great places to start are with Christian business leader luncheons or breakfast. You might have those in your community where you can actually meet other Christian business leaders. They're there for that purpose, and then just talk with people in your own church that are in business leadership or they know people who are. Invite them and their spouse to go to lunch or dinner with you and your spouse and get to know them and help develop that friendship with them because that builds that trust, as we mentioned. And if that's not possible, going to dinner or something like that, even making just friendly phone calls to these business leaders and taking just a minute or two just to get to know them better and make them a friend. I think one of the things that CMI can do to support our work with business leaders and organizations is maybe perhaps sponsoring additional research that shows how much companies can benefit from better employee marriages and their relationships. It does affect their employment. It does affect their business, it affects their company and their hiring practice and all those areas. And I think also providing resources that apply biblical principles to marriage relationships without being overtly Christian and Bible based would be helpful. The principles are still there, and they're godly biblical principles, but we can adjust our message to that. And so as we move out of our comfort zones out into the public square with businesses and where marriage and relationship issues really are a truly felt need, because that's one of the things that men will actually talk about with their buddies at work is how their marriage is doing. And so they'll talk about those things, but working with businesses, I think, is a logical step to promote God's ideal for marriage. So thank you for allowing me to speak. I hope I stayed within the time.
Yes, thank you so much, Bruce. As always, we always enjoy hearing from you. And up next, we have the privilege of hearing from Jerry Angelo of the Southwest Missouri Marriage Initiative. And Jerry's going to be sharing with us on engaging the government sector. And I've never met a networker quite like Jerry. He really has a gift for connecting in the political sector. And so you're in for a treat. Jerry, the floor is yours, sir.
Hey, great. Thank you guys for joining, and thank you for having me on today. 5 and 5, 5 questions in 5 minutes. Here we go. Well, first of all, it's all about relationship, and we're not just talking about marriage, but every relationship that we have here on earth. It's important. I think it's part of God's design. And the first question was, what's the single most important principle for establishing effective partnerships and collaborations within the government? And I say right off the bat, trust and relationship. And this takes time, it takes energy and empathy. And I'm not talking about compassion, I'm talking about empathy, because there is a difference. Empathy is feeling what other people are feeling, and compassion is the action that you take afterwards. And so sometimes people just want to be heard. They don't necessarily want you to do anything. So that's why I say time, energy, and empathy, not so much compassion. It's also important to people important to let people know why you're doing what you're doing, but only after hearing them first. So you don't want to just come jumping out there and, hey, we're this and that, and we do. Have some empathy, listen to what they're saying, spend some time with them, build trust over time, and that relationship will definitely flourish. Definitely more listening, less talking. So when Kate and I, when we were meeting someone new, I always tell her, hey, let's let them talk. Because we like to talk and we can talk and talk. I mean, I'm Italian, we're loud. More listening, less talking. I think that's definitely the key there. Number 2, what's the biggest challenge or opportunity in collaborating with government personnel, and what's the best way to address it? One of the biggest challenges, I think, is miscommunication or unable to connect to someone effectively. And this also leads to the breakdown in relationship, much like what happens in marriage, right? When there's a breakdown in communication, the relationship starts to wane a bit. And again, it's all about relationship. It's not just marriage, it's all relationships. And, people often see you in the lenses that they have on, and they hear you in their listening language. So you kind of have to learn to speak their language if you want to be the most effective on what you're trying to communicate. So put on a pair of their glasses, speak in their language, and I think that you'll be more effective in communicating with them instead of leading to miscommunication or disconnect, which is going to be not good for working with them. Number 3, what's one strategy has been most successful in fostering trust and understanding? So an approach that we like to take intentionally is pray with them. Show your sincerity. This is definitely one way for others to hear your heart, and it lets them peek into your prayer life a little bit, and especially when you're praying for them. So they get to hear your heart. They get to get a peek into your prayer life. We have this thing that we do called the 6-minute prayer for couples. And it's the husband would pray, for 3 minutes in 3 different areas for his wife. And she gets to participate by way of listening to that prayer that the husband has with the Lord. And then we flip it, and then the wife does the same thing. And that is so moving and amazing. And so what's really neat is when you do that in the public area with officials, maybe not publicly, but in your little private environment or your prayer time with maybe a government official or a leader, ask them, hey, can I pray for you? Is there something going on with you that you need prayer for? What do you need prayer for? And many of them will tell you, yeah, please pray with me here. I'm facing this issue or that issue. And so that's an amazing way of furthering that relationship with those folks. So I think that's a great strategy. And you definitely should try that if you're not already doing that. So how can a CMI effectively support and complement existing work and priorities of government organizations? I say whatever they're doing, partner with them. Become a resource for them. Tell them, hey, we would love to walk alongside you. How can we help? But definitely first ask them, and then listen to what they're saying, and then you can show them how you can help. You don't want to just jump in, right? Ask them, listen to them, be empathetic, and then say, hey, you know what? I think we might be able to help you in this area. And then the last question is, what's the single best way to address potential barriers or misunderstandings that might arise when communicating with government personnel? I always like to make sure to make it clear that we're there to serve them first and their agenda. What can I do for you? How can I help you? Have you thought about maybe a way that we could work together? But mainly just, let them know that you're in service to them, and so that they're not threatened that you have some hidden agenda or something. What's their agenda? Ask them how you can help. There's going to be plenty of time to work together where you can create an opportunity for helping further your tasks. And I think, the Lord will bring about those opportunities, so you don't have to push for them. Just let that happen. Ask how you can serve them. And in closing, relationship is the conduit in which ministry flows and flourishes. And, that is how things get done in the kingdom of God. And if you hadn't noticed, with several speakers that have already been talking, and I'm sure the ones after me there's going to be a common thread here regarding all these cross-sectional partnerships. Look for it when we're speaking about it. It's all about relationships. It's there. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing with us today, Jerry. Your passion to engage the government sector has really been an inspiration to many of our CMI family. I know we just talked to someone this week who said that you've given them the courage to step back in and go for it when engaging government officials. So thank you for being a part. And up next, we get to hear from Amy Gilford of the Maryland Marriage Initiative on partnering with school systems. And Amy has years of experience and lots of success in this sector. And so we're privileged to get to hear from her. Amy, whenever you're ready.
And Jerry, thank you so much. Yes, the common thread is I just feel like I could say ditto right here and right now and be done, because so much of what you said and the previous speakers have said, yes, there's a tie-in, there's a connection all the way through. And of course, number one, it all begins with relationships. And I love how every CMI that's on the call and each of you that has shared, each one of us brings a different perspective to building a community marriage initiative to the table, to the community. And ours here in Maryland is education, primarily because of our co-founders, Bill and Ann McKenna, who are educators. And then I didn't learn and I married an educator, or maybe I did learn and I married an educator. But because of our family's history and investment in the lives of students, the families and the school leadership for decades, that's what makes our partnerships work with the school systems in our community. What is the number one principle for us in forming these key relationships? And these are the schools that we're in, and all their logos and banners. The next slide, please. Relationships, relationships, relationships. Can't underestimate or even overestimate the power of our relationships. Richard Albertson told us this years ago, and he continues to say this to us. Our co-founders and even my husband, who are key into the school system, they had great reputations also. And so by spending time and investing into the community, you build that trust. And so we are continuing to build on those relationships and reputations that they have even years later. And because of this foundation, then we are able to go to the school system and say, hey, we have an idea for building for a fatherhood summit, or for training for the teachers and risk avoidance? Or would you even let us maybe try to pilot some of our classes in your classroom? And they're like, sure. Because of the relationship that we have, they're willing to hear what we have to say and to try things new that will help invest in their schools. So slide 4. So as we began to do this, though, you have to have more than relationship. You have to have a little substance that goes with it, too. So the second R that we focus on after relationships is research. We dove in and I did my homework, and someone's also mentioned this earlier, know your audience. I looked at my school system strategic plan and I saw what they're doing in the relationship education area. And I found a funny spot that we actually fall under, and it's in yellow is the purpose of how we serve the community, but we actually are falling in under their DEI requirements, which might seem like an odd place, but that didn't matter to me. All I cared about was finding what's going on in the school system, showing that I'm paying attention to what's important to them and what they're trying to accomplish. And then I came alongside, you go on to the next slide. I did more research and I showed them what research is behind the curriculum and resources that we have that could help them meet their needs to build healthy relationships, which was in their pillars of their strategic plan, and how they also needed to work with a community organization. So I have check. I can do both of those things that help them meet their goals. So it became a win-win for us. And I went a step further and I looked at what was also being done in the schools. And I realized that some of the people that school systems are partnering with did not have best practices listed after their curriculum and presentations and did not refer to research. So I said, we can do that too. And so we made it a point to work with the governor's office so that we could now be included in this Healthy Teen Dating Violence Guide for health educators across the state of Maryland. And again, that's because of showing the research of what we do. Overcoming the obstacle of being a faith-based organization is something we had to deal with early on. By focusing on research, that helps allay any concerns of like a Christian organization coming into the school system. So they see we're using best practices and that even government agencies recognize what we're doing. Someone called that being flexible earlier. I forget what the word was, agility, I think was the first, what the first speaker said. So we've taken good Bible-based curriculum and made it agile so it can adapt into the school system. So we've looked at research and again, barriers. How do we deal with barriers? Because we are a faith-based organization. Marriage can be an issue in this culture. So what we've decided to do is these more R's. I couldn't make peace start with an R, so I decided to say really pray for this one here. So we are constantly in prayer. We have a calendar that we send out to our donors and supporters, and we are constantly as a staff, as a team, as a board, we're praying over all the marriage initiative and the student initiative. The other R that is important in dealing with obstacles is just, we can't be ostriches with our heads in the sand. One of the biggest pains in the neck for us here in Maryland is the blueprint design that's being forced on us by our state legislature. Legislators make life difficult for people at the local level. So we have to be aware of that. As someone's coming into schools, I know that's putting pressure on the people in schools that we partner with. So I want them to know that I care about the stresses and the things that they're under, and I'm willing to adapt to what they need, work with their schedule and limitations that are constantly coming down from the state to help them meet their needs. I was able to go out to lunch this month with the superintendent of schools. So, and she loves what we're doing. And so having that relationship with the teachers is important as well. We do excellent presentations. When the teachers often bring in special guests, sometimes the kids are like, oh, they're so awful, but we love yours. We want the teacher to look good too, and make it a win for the teacher. And then it becomes a win for us too. We're working with the next generation. We're serving the community with relationship education, which accomplishes our mission. And we're very aware of the culture around us and being be prepared when we come in to teach, that we have to be able to present things relationally that help the kids deal with the impact of the culture. So in summary, I think on my last slide, these are the 4 R's that help us do what God has called us to do in our community. We're emphasizing relationships all around us. We're doing our research. We're really in prayer, and we're recognizing what's happening all around us so that we can be relevant as servants in our community. One other thing, a lot of people think it's really cool that we're in the schools, and it is, but I have to remind you, if you care about kids, you have to care about marriage. Everything that we're doing, seeing in the schools is a fallout, when it's not good, of what's not happening in the marriages in the home. That's the front line, the marriages. So yes, I'm happy that we're in there, and it's really important that we're in there. But the marriage piece is crucial to having the next generation be healthy and stable and strong. So all of you are working on marriages, like we are too. Keep up the important work, please.
Thank you so much, Amy, for sharing that. And thank you for saying that, because that is what this is all about, is supporting marriages. And we do know that the most important thing to the health of a child is that their parents have a healthy marriage and that they have a healthy family that they're being brought up in. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Well, up next, we get to hear from Carl again, and he's going to be covering partnering with family law attorneys. So, Carl, I won't hesitate any longer. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Stephanie. 5 questions, 5 minutes, folks. Here we go with the family law community. You know, one of the first things that I would mention is that the trust building process in the family law partnerships is slow, but the opportunities for partnership are powerful. And one of the things that's so interesting about the family law segment is that the mannerisms, the culture, the social standards are as different from the church as any other sector that we can be working with. And why do I say that? And this is my second question, is that there is a tremendous lack of hope in the family law segment. People that work in family law segment, they see smoke, blood, and bullets flying every day in the courtroom. And it is a difficult world to be in. It's been said, in fact, the American Bar Association put out a report indicating that roughly half of all people working in the legal profession are struggling with either a chemical dependency or a mental health issue. Anxiety and depression is very difficult for people working in this space. And so earlier someone said, know your audience? You're working with people that are just working in a really, really difficult space. The one thing that they appreciate is respect. Because a lot of family law attorneys did not get into the legal work to work in family law. It's just kind of a natural place where a lot of attorneys begin their work, and they realize that it's kind of a mission field of sorts. If you want to engage American families at one of the most painful moments, get into family law, and so because of that, there's a tremendous lack of hope. One of the things that we've had to help family law people understand or reframe is that while they think that couples filing for divorce have about a 1% chance for reconciliation, the research indicates that 45% of couples filing for divorce actually have one person leaning into the marriage. And in 10% of those filing for divorce, both couples want the marriage to survive. And so being really, really patient and empathetic and understanding what it's like to be in their shoes gives you that ability to, over a long period of time, help remind them and help them reframe what it is that they're working with. One of the biggest opportunities, which is one of our questions, is to build a network of support. And what do I mean by that? Here in San Antonio, we built a network between 4 different groups, between family law attorneys, between people that do marriage intensives, with the counseling community and with church leaders. And what we found is that family law attorneys wanted to have a place where they could safely hand off a couple that they felt like might have some glimmer of hope. But those couples are really, really troubled. And so we built this network of support where the intensive leaders engaged first. And then after they were couples went through intensives, couples often got handed off to a specialist in the counseling world. And ultimately they landed in some sort of aftercare, which oftentimes happens in the church world. So that was a huge opportunity that created a lot of trust with our attorneys to know that if they did hand off a couple, that they would be really well taken care of. One of the things, as I've closed on my last question, is that you've got to use language that conforms to their world, again, to their mannerisms, to their social standards, using language that's comfortable for them, because family law attorneys live in a world of mistrust, as was said earlier. And so you're building trust over a slow period of time, but it really helps to go to their world rather than asking them to come into your world. So understand and be empathetic with the incredible, intense challenges that they face, that so many of them are struggling with chemical dependency or mental illness issues because of the incredible pressures and just the incredible darkness they feel. Have empathy for that, have patience with them, be there, as like Jerry said, be there to serve. And I think you can build a great partnership with a family law community. Thank you, Stephanie.
Well, thank you so much, Carl, for sharing with us today. And we're going to wrap up our training session today with a Q&A. And for any of you that may have questions or comments for any of our speakers, so as we move into that Q&A session, I would love to hear from all of you. So just go ahead and raise your virtual hands and we'll try to get to everyone. And while you're finding your raise hand emoji and getting prepared for that, I do want to make a quick announcement. Brady and Melissa Vandenberg of Wyoming Strong Families have agreed to do a virtual marriage ministry workshop for CMI leaders who are interested in bringing the Family Life Marriage Ministry workshop to their cities. And so this event is going to be held via Zoom on Saturday, April 13th from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I'm going to be sending the link to register in our follow-up email. So be sure and get registered as soon as possible. The Vandenbergs will have some materials that they will be sending you for that training. So you'll want to get registered just as soon as you can. So do we have any questions for any of our speakers today? I see Bill.
Just the comment is the universal thoughts that come out from everybody. I mean, general principles that occur in every area that we're talking about. The idea of building relationships, building trust, speaking their language, educating yourself about what they're going through before you even talk to them, so you can relate to them. So I think a lot of stuff we may be doing, but this is an affirmation to what we're doing, that everybody else is doing the same thing. We're all on the same boat, so to speak, and we're all rowing in the same direction to improve the marital structure of all these different areas we talked to. So hats off to all of you. It's just great to be on the same team together.
Well, thank you for your observations, Bill. That's great. I see Bruce has his hand raised.
Well, I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce Bob Lee, who's on the call today. He and his wife Robbie have graciously agreed to help us out in some our Tulsa Marriage Initiative here, and I just wanted to say thank you and welcome him to our call.
Bob, it's so great to have you with us, and welcome to the CMI family. We're glad to have you and Robbie with us. So
glad to be here, learn some great information, some target audiences that we had not considered in the marriage ministry that we lead at our church. And I really got some valuable information here, and we're looking forward to working with Bruce and Lita and seeing what we can do in the general Tulsa area, Northeast Oklahoma.
yeah. Well, welcome to the team. We're so glad to have you as part of the CMI family. Do we have any other questions or comments before we conclude our call today? All right. It looks like you guys just did such a great job of answering questions that we don't have any more questions. So I do want to say that I will be sending the link to this recording to all of you, along with the resource package, which will include all of the slide decks and any other resources that go along with this event. So be on the lookout for that email, and please don't hesitate to reach out to me at sammy.soltmans@gmail.com if you need anything at all. And we just want to say thank you all for joining us today. We really do love and appreciate all of you. And we just hope that you have a great weekend, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.